Good morning, and thank you for coming to Coffee with the Mayor. As you know, we've been doing a series of these throughout the year, and we will continue into next year. So look forward for your mayor, wherever you live or work, to come as well. These are great opportunities for you to meet the mayor, speak with them, give them your card, receive their card, get information about the cities that you live and work in. I wanted to let you know that we will be splitting this time into two halves. The first half, we're going to be asking questions of the mayor, and then at break, there are 3x5 cards and pens over here. You can write down your questions for the mayor, and when we open up the second half for questions, we'll start out with those 3x5 card questions, so that we'll go through as many of those as we have time for. If we run out of time, which frequently happens, then I will send your questions to the mayor and her staff to follow up on at a later date. And then we publish them on wemargad.org, wemargad.org, and that's the website for all things government affairs. So please look at that website and use it for the resource it is. Right now, it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Mayor Sharon Wolcott from Surprise. Sit right here in the center. And also, we are pleasured to have Eric Fitzer. He is Community Affairs Director our Community Development Director, sorry about that, for the City of Surprise. Eric. Well, thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, we want to start out with a first really big, broad question, which is, what is your big picture, big vision for Surprise in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, well, I started my big picture vision 14 years ago. That's when I came to the City of Surprise. And I have to tell you, when I first came to the City of Surprise, we were designed to be a bedroom community. And a bedroom community that could have accommodated up to 1 million people. And I challenged the city leadership at the time, and I said, number one, why do you want to be 1 million bedrooms? And where are you going to find the water? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But it occurred to me that really think about how the Phoenix metropolitan area has developed. It really just sort of happened. It wasn't planned, it just sort of happened. And it's one of the most sprawling areas in the entire United States. And it used to be that the city, well, Sun City and Sun City West thought that they were at the edge of the region. Well, now they might as well be Central Phoenix, because we are the edge. We're the leading edge of the Northwest Valley is in Surprise and Peoria. And the reality is our planning area is 303 square miles of planning area, and we've only developed about 1/3 of it. But who says that we have to cover every square inch of what's left with a rooftop? Now, you may like that, but I don't, because I know this. There is a lot of Arizona to develop. And if we don't build a quality community, you're going to be wanting more than just a place to sleep. You're going to be wanting a place that you can live and work and play, which is something that we've all talked about here in the City of Surprise for a very long time. But we really didn't have a strategy on how we were going to go do that. So when I ran for mayor, I said, let's focus on jobs, education, and transportation. That was known as the JET initiative. Jobs, because 91% of the people who are still in the workforce in Surprise, they work someplace else. They don't work in Surprise. They get on the road and they clog all of our freeways getting to Phoenix and Scottsdale to work. Education, because there isn't enough education opportunities at all levels in the West Valley to serve the West Valley. And again, too many of our students are getting in a car and going into the East Valley to get particularly their higher education and career technical education. So then finally, transportation, because if you can't move, you don't have a community. You basically have just a place to sit and sleep. And we really need to focus more on transportation, because as a region, we do things together, we do things collaboratively, but at the edge, the Northwest Valley edge, I call City of Surprise all the time. I say we're at the end of the world's largest cul-de-sac. You understand that type of terminology. And it's true. If you look at some of our growth areas of Surprise, it's really challenging. 163rd, one way in, one way out, and it's really challenging for those homeowners that live up there. So we want everybody in the city of Surprise to really enjoy the fact that they live in one of the safest, cleanest communities in America. So I'm going to take ourselves up to about 60,000 square feet, which is or 60,000 feet in the air, because that's kind of where I live. And to remind myself and to remind my colleagues kind of where I reside at 60,000 square feet, I had a very large picture of the valley mounted on the wall just outside of my office. So if you ever come up and visit, you can take a look at the picture, and you can see where Surprise fits in and where it could fit in. The reality is Surprise is snuggled right up against to the White Tank Mountain Regional Park. The White Tank Mountain Regional Park is the largest regional park in the United States of America. That's pretty amazing. So that is an amazing asset that we need to protect and that we all cherish. Those of us who love the mountains, who love hiking, who love open spaces, and we want to protect that. We don't want to see houses crawling up the side of the mountain in the white tanks. So we as a city have to have policies that protect that. So creating an environment that supports and utilizes and leverages the value of the White Tank Mountain Park, all of the ability to connect to trails. Maricopa County has done an amazing job at doing more with bicycle trails and hiking trails than just about any place I've ever lived. Is it fully connected yet? Not quite, but we're still working on it, and Surprise will continue to play a role as we connect all of Maricopa County with its regional assets. So again, back to thinking about the big picture, you look at the city of Surprise, tucked up in the Northwest Valley, kind of isolated from the transportation infrastructure. So the 303 is really transformational for us in the Northwest Valley. And so we are going to protect that asset and make sure that we don't just waste it with putting anything willy-nilly there. We're going to put what makes the most sense. From my perspective, I think that what makes the most sense is to protect that as a jobs corridor, as an employment corridor, because we want people in Surprise to have a short commute. We don't want them to commute an hour and a half in each direction. That is not quality of life. So having the 303 corridor protected as a jobs corridor is really important. And there will be homes as well in that corridor. Makes a lot of sense. Most of that land is actually owned by the Mormon Church, and so we work very much with the Mormon Church in Salt Lake in how we want to see that develop. So creating that environment where you can live, work, and play, it's not just one place is a center where you can live, work, and play, and everybody else is in a housing community. This literally has to be nodes of livable, workable, and entertaining environments all over the city. But we also have to think about the density and the critical mass that it takes to support that. Infrastructure. Infrastructure is huge. Transportation infrastructure, education infrastructure, and environmental infrastructure to include water, to include Wi-Fi. Everything is all things that we have to take into the big picture. So we focus on that. We focused on creating a general plan that is nimble enough to go with what's happening, but also give guidance to whoever's in office at the time that this is where we're thinking. And we can't just willy-nilly stop on a dime and turn around and go someplace else. This is a strategy on how we build ourselves out of being a bedroom community to a world-class community with a global presence. That's kind of my moniker. I want us to have a global presence. And one of the reasons I think we already do is because we've been very, very aggressive at attracting foreign companies to invest in the city of Surprise. If you look at the city of Surprise, we are at the edge of the region and we were built and designed to be the bedroom for Phoenix. And Phoenix is a market that has its own challenges in terms of bringing jobs and economic development opportunity to this region, the 5th largest region in the entire country. But here we are at the Northwest Valley, at the end of the cul-de-sac, without a whole lot of transportation infrastructure. So we are challenged to fight for the same economic crumbs that fall off the table from the city of Phoenix as every other community in the valley. So a couple of years ago, I was listening to some discussion at the MAG Regional Council where I serve on the board, and I was listening to the discussion about our trading partners. Our chief trading partners in Arizona are Canada and Mexico. And Phoenix has done a really good job. They've really been focused on Mexico. And I thought to myself, well, I don't want Phoenix's leftovers. So let's focus on how we can be special and unique in the City of Surprise. So we were the second city ever to join the Canada-Arizona Business Council. And shortly thereafter, we began sending delegations of our staff up to Canada to start making connections, business connections in Toronto. And those business connections have yielded us a lot of new partnerships, people who are coming in and taking a look. And if you know, as realtors, you know that there's a lot of Canadians that come down here. They come down here for the winter because it's much more pleasant here in the winter than it is up there. But they also come down here as people who are active participants in the business community up in different parts of Canada. And if you think about it, Canada has 43 million people in the entire country. And if you're a businessman, you're going to run out of customers. And then there's the United States, right just south of you. And then you've got a wonderful place like Surprise, Arizona, that doesn't expect to steal your business. We want to help them grow their business. So we're working through the Canada-Arizona Business Council and through our own international initiative to bring more Canadian businesses to help them grow their business in Surprise, Arizona. And we're also using those partnerships that we've developed in Toronto to help bring foreign companies that are interested in a footprint in the United States, but they're coming through Canada. And these are a lot of European countries, companies that are thinking about a footprint in the United States. And they're coming through Canada, and we have an incubator, as it were, a business incubator in the City of Surprise, which has been very successful in helping those companies become American companies and get that footprint in place. So they're helping us grow jobs. And another thing that I really want to mention, because this is really important, and you start getting me going on big picture, and I'm not going to stop. So education. Again, that was part of my initial platform was we need to have more education opportunities. And when I was talking to the Germans at the German embassy a couple of years back, I said, what is it that will attract a German company to locate in someplace like Surprise? And he said, well, what are you doing for career technical education? And I went, nothing, not much that we can consider. The legislature had just defunded career and technical education programs in the state. And so I reached out to WestMech, which is the career and technical education overlay in the West Valley, and they had planned on building a fab lab right in our city center area. And I said, what's that going to get us, really? I mean, what we really need is programming that is nimble enough to be able to respond to the different industries that we're trying to bring to town so that you can help those people train high school students, veterans that are returning back to the workforce, and those people who've had job displacement that need to be retrained into the workforce. That's what we really need. And so partnering with WestMech, we were able to convince them to purchase a 19-acre parcel along Grand Avenue. And today, I think we've now been 3 weeks in classes at the WestMech facility. It's this big, gorgeous, contemporary building right on Grand Avenue. And it's just part of the big picture vision that we have as a city on how we revitalize our original town site and how we really strengthen our main transportation corridors and gateways into our city center. And the city center is a discussion that probably can stand on its own. So again, big picture, jobs, education, transportation, that's really where we've been focused. And we don't want to be just another bedroom community. where you go home and sleep at night, because we know over the long haul that is not sustainable. At the end of the day, if all you have is a place to sleep, somebody will find someplace more interesting in another 5, 10, 15 years, a little further west, and people will just pick up stakes and leave. So we need to make certain that we're maintaining a strong, vibrant community, and that's our goal. And so I want to thank our partners, not only just our staff, but city council members. So Councilmember Remley is here joining us today, and I appreciate you being there, Councilmember Remley. And I see in the back, we have planning commission members too. So again, we could not do this without all of us working together. And one of the things that I always say about realtors is you're among my favorite people, because you are the eyes and ears of every community. You know what's going on, oftentimes at the same real time as we do. And you hear when people come to a city, you know what they're looking for, and you know if that city doesn't have it. So that's why this relationship is so important, is that we continue to work together so that we can rely on each other to make sure that those potential customers that are coming to the community are getting what they're looking for, and that we're providing it. So I want to thank you again for your invitation here, and especially want to thank you for the long-term working relationship that we've had together to try to make Surprise a very special place. Thank you.
When it was announced that Mayor Wolcott would be here, we had several members who emailed in questions. So I'm going to go to those right now before we get to sign ordinances, which we had a lot of questions about. But before we get to that, these are non-sign ordinance questions. What do you see on the horizon for future housing developments? What is the city's residential goals?
Well, for starters, I think our residential goals have to be to enhance and diversify our product line. A lot of Surprise was built and developed on first-time home buyers. A lot of our home product was that. And, you know, there's a lot of people that came in and found the City of Surprise a wonderful, clean environment, safe environment, and affordable. And that's all great. But then as they grow their careers and they want to have a place to move up to, they're challenged. So scarcity becomes an issue in the City of Surprise. You all probably know that. Oftentimes I hear from realtors saying, there's not enough for sale on the market. Well, don't I know it? And I can tell you that just recently I sold my house in a day. A day. That told me one of two things. Either I was underpriced, and I don't think I was, or scarcity. There's not enough for sale on the market. And then, by the way, I needed a place to rent. I needed to move all my stuff to a place to rent. Well, how many people know that finding a place to rent in the City of Surprise, you can't find it. So I literally had to challenge my realtor to sit on the market. I was on Lake Powell, and I found out that my house sold in a day, and they wanted me out in 3 weeks, and I said, find me a place to rent. I have to live in the City of Surprise. And so she literally sat on the market, and as soon as a rental house came online, we snapped it up in 5 minutes, sight unseen. So that's what scarcity does. It really limits the choices, and so we really need to try to provide more diversity and more choices to our residents. And also thinking forward, think about what the growing marketplace will be. Once upon a time, certainly when I was a young woman with starting my family, the American dream was buying a house. Well, now it's more like renting. There's a lot of interest in the rental market, and we know we don't have enough of it in the City of Surprise. But we want diversity. We want things a little bit for everyone. I've challenged Eric a couple of times when we've had developers coming in, and I say, can you ask them to kind of set aside a little bit for just, unique homes, for custom home building? Because one of the things that we are trying to control is wildcat development. So people who want all this open space, and they don't want to live in a a typical traditional gated community, they want to live out behind their own gates and their own walls and their own fences on acreage. The problem is that creates an environment that eventually we know we're going to have to serve, because we're going to continue to grow it, and it makes it more challenging for us. So providing opportunities for people who want larger lots, who want to build custom homes in an environment that's closer in so they can take advantage of also all of the amenities that we offer in the City of Surprise, I think will help us over the long haul control some of that wildcat development that is making it more challenging for Eric's department to provide services, and all of the city to provide services. So we really need diversity of product, and we need to really focus on some of the growing interest in rental and creating more of an urban environment.
What is the update on the hotel and entertainment district in discussion?
Okay, now we're talking about our downtown. Didn't think it would take me long to get there.
Yes.
So the downtown is really what made me decide the downtown area, which is the square mile around City Hall. And effectively, that's the area that we're talking about. And that was the parcel of land that made me decide I wanted to live in the City of Surprise, because I saw that as an amazing opportunity to build a downtown from scratch. And that is a very unique opportunity. In fact, there is no other parcel like it in North America, I would argue, that is basically a blank slate. Just dream big and let's make it happen. Now, it used to be that downtowns grew by building housing, and then you'd wait 75 years and the houses would get kind of ramshackle and sort of spent over time. And downtowns would develop by coming back in and redeveloping by scraping down the old and building vertical. And you know that we've recently went through a bit of a difference of opinion on how you build a downtown. And recently there was a proposal that would have put housing in that downtown area. And I would argue, and I did argue, that number one, it was against the underlying law that was set up by visionaries on the city council many, many years ago, 20-some years ago. But it was also, it would have been a tragedy to see us go and build another single-family detached residential environment in a downtown that's ready to go right now. Right now, it's finding the right investors. We are ready to go. And so rather than having to tear down the old, we have 130,000 residents in single family and some in rental right up to this square mile, built right up to it. So the opportunity is enormous, but you really need to have a vision and a plan. And so creating that master plan is what the council has said time and again. We need to have a master plan so that we can market it to investors who are interested in investing in growing an entertainment environment. And literally, this will be a mixed-use environment where you can live, you can live in a residential environment, and we're talking going vertical, rental, condominium, but more densely populated area to create that critical mass. And one of the things that certainly will be our first critical mass of dense residents are the new college students that are going to be growing with us at Ottawa University. And Ottawa University was part of our strategy on how we build a downtown to create an environment where students would be living and working and playing in that square mile, and their families, their parents when they visit. We now see we're projecting somewhere around 3,000 residential students in the next 10 years will be living in that square mile. And it could be more because we projected that there was going to be only 250 students in the opening class. We just opened the class, and the class convocation last week was 434 students for the first class. Pretty amazing. And there's an awful lot of people that are very excited about being a part of Surprise and all the promise that we have. So creating that diversity, creating housing for those students, creating housing opportunities for people who prefer to live in a more urban environment. If you like suburban, we got it. If you want more of a rural flavor, we've got it. So creating an opportunity for all of those people to be able to have a city center where they can really enjoy that entertainment is really, really critical to our vision.
Great. And what is Surprise doing to become a small business friendly environment?
I think we all already are. And Mr. Nelson, wherever you are, I think you kind of alluded to it. We are friendly to small business. We know how important small businesses are to our city. We also know that larger businesses are going to create a lot of activity for those small businesses. So we know that it's kind of an environment that we're creating where large businesses, they need the smaller businesses. We need smaller businesses to support just some of the retail needs of our community. I don't see ourselves ever being a city that's going to be home to a regional, the old style regional mall. And so many of the secondary market opportunities are going to go to some of those smaller businesses who are looking to start up in some of these what we call strip malls in the city of Surprise. That's largely what we have for that secondary market. And that's really helping a lot of the new business startups are coming in and finding open space for that. So small business needs big business in order to really thrive, as well as a community that's very interested in creating a residential component that doesn't just sit here all day, but needs to go out to work, needs to go dining, has their children in schools. That's the kind of resident that we want to serve, is every resident, not just one particular sector of our community.
Okay. So we are going to go ahead and ask the first of our questions regarding the sign ordinance. The City of Surprise is one of several cities who's currently reviewing their sign ordinances because of the Reed decision in July 2015. As you know, Weimar has commented on the proposed draft sign ordinance and on the separate topic of the February 2017 vote the City Council had that brought us back to the 2009 sign ordinance, which is what you each are operating under right now if you're in the City of Surprise. As you can imagine, the members and their clients are interested in this issue, both residential and commercial. So we're going to take each of these separately. The first one is in 2009, Weimar discussed with the city the problem agents were having at the time holding open houses, and you all remember what that time was like. So you could go into subdivisions like Desert Oasis or Marley Park or several others, and they were virtual ghost towns. You go a long way before you saw another person. So one of our challenges was, under the sign ordinance with only one sign being available, one temporary sign, we couldn't get people into the community to see the house that was open, and there wasn't even anybody for them to talk to. So we went to the city and discussed this with them because the city was as interested in us as having those houses sold. And that inability to direct people, we suggested that the city allow us to have signs that, temporary directional signs for each place that a person would turn in order to get to that property. And at that time, they went ahead and they did a temporary change to the sign ordinance that allowed that, and that temporary change was extended for the Bell Grand construction. Then in February of 2017, City Council had a vote that changed that. And so it's our, so can you tell us more about the City Council's vote at that time in February? What is being done? Because I know you are in the process of addressing the concerns that have since come up since that happened. Eric Fitzer and his staff have been working on some proposed language which will go before the City Council this evening. So if you're interested in going to City Council meeting tonight, you will hear discussion of that language. And it's on their website. If you go to Council Meetings and Agenda, you can pull up that language right now today and read that as well. So you can go read that before you get there. So if the city adopts that, how is it going to help alleviate some of the negative consequences that have happened since that February vote? And can you tell us more about that proposal?
Right. I'm just going to speak briefly from 60,000 feet because that's where I live again. And as a policymaker, we have to think about how any kind of a decision that we make affects the whole picture. If we get too far down into the weeds, we can make a decision that is ill-informed. It will have impacts that we never even dreamed about and discussed. And that's why we rely on professional staff who can help us kind of through that puzzle on how you make certain that the decisions that we make are going to have the correct impacts and give us the results that we're looking for. So I'm going to let Eric kind of go into how we got to where we are, and so that you can understand. And then we'll kind of go back and forth from the policy side and the delivery side.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the things that generated the need to rewrite the sign ordinance was specifically the Reed versus Gilbert decision. In fact, prior to even Reed versus Gilbert, city staff started looking at the sign ordinance and noticed we had a few problems with the sign ordinance. We had a temporary policy in place since 2009 that, after 8 years of temporariness becomes almost, permanent in nature. So we were looking at our sign ordinance. We started going down the revision stage and understanding that Reed versus Gilbert was going to come out. We put a stop to that until such time as kind of Reed versus Gilbert came out. In that time frame, we also noticed that we had some specific issues with some of the real estate signage that was kind of going on out in the city. We had complaints from neighbors and so forth about the amount of signage and so forth. At the time, our code enforcement officers were going out and issuing notices to agents with a proliferation of signage that may be located on one corner. So staff had so basically what staff were looking at doing was, in about August of that year, we were looking at taking forward a specific policy regarding real estate signage, so that we could, so that it was a little more defined on how they could be located, where they could be located, and as your representative basically said, that would be allowing directional that would get you to the open house. However, Reed versus Gilbert came out, and the decision came out from the Supreme Court in August, I believe, of 2016. We put a stop to that, and then we basically went through and started going down through the whole ordinance. In fact, some of the professional organizations that, that the planners and so forth are associated with, the Arizona Planning Association started putting on classes with city attorneys' offices and so forth throughout the city, and basically saying that all cities need to be looking at these sign ordinances at this point. Now, that's not to say certain cities have been more proactive than others. Certain cities are looking at making minor changes. Other cities, like the city of Surprise, are looking at making full-fledged modifications to our entire ordinance so that we're able to be in conformance with kind of the Reed versus Gilbert decision. Flash forward, at the council behest, we started going out to the public with our sign ordinance. We did a workshop with council, kind of explained, here's kind of the first draft. Again, it's a first draft. This is only staff driven. Really, it's a city of Surprise ordinance. It's the businesses, the residents, the council's kind of ordinance that we take forward, and the decisions that are made are really kind of the community itself. So we started rolling that out. We also had a revision to removing the temporary sign ordinance. Again, it was really meant in a temporary basis during kind of the economic downturn. However, and I'll take a lot of blame off the front of it, that maybe staff could have done a better job with educating the council and the constituents, kind of, when you repeal this, here's what's going to happen. What happened with the repeal, we then started dealing with other issues. Open houses, businesses, and so forth were starting getting notices. Again, our staff, our line staff are doing exactly what their jobs are to do. So we started looking at it more and more. We had some versions of the temporary sign portion of the proposed ordinance that we started having just some discussions with individual council members about maybe we look at it kind of a beta test. We see kind of how this would work. So the original version of the sign ordinance had 3 specific signs that would be allowed for a qualified temporary event. Because of the Reed versus Gilbert decision, one of the things that when we try to enforce our ordinances, specifically on signage, we can't read the signage. One of our planners in our office, Robert Kufis, who's running this project, has a great example where he's got these 2 signs and it says for sale and by owner. And he said, basically, you can't read that. You have to turn them around so You're looking at what the sign is, what it's made up is, what the makeup is, where it's placed, and those kinds of basically sign, place, and manner are the things that we can regulate. So one of the things that we've looked at specifically on the open house signage is that we've kind of defined what a lawful temporary event is, which a open house would be a lawful temporary event that would be allowed signage based on criteria. I think it's 24 inches high and so many inches wide. We looked at the 3 per event, and we saw that there might be some issues with that because of just the nature of our subdivisions having many different twists and turns as you go through. So one of the things that I know Waymar has done a really good job of is saying, having an arbitrary number, and it goes to some of your colleagues as well, speaking at our Planning and Zoning Commission and our council meetings, having an arbitrary number maybe isn't the right way to go. Maybe it's something that you have enough that will take you to that event, and that way you're able to get people through the subdivision. So that's one of the items that's on for discussion with council, is that one of the things we've looked at specifically with that language, specifically on this beta test of this temporary sign ordinance policy until we put in the full-on sign ordinance in place, is that we allow 1 per corner on the way into the subdivision until you get to the event, basically located at the nearest arterial street. The reason to do that is we looked at also a couple other ways of doing distance and so forth. Well, when our code enforcement officers are driving around in vehicles, having a distance is much easier to see, look at a screen and an aerial image and doing a radii than it's actually people driving through the subdivision. So that's one of the reasons that the way the language kind of is crafted for tonight's meeting for potential action is the way it's crafted.
Great. So parallel to this issue is the issue of the new updated draft sign ordinance. And we have given our input on that, as well as spoken at the Planning and Zoning, as well as given written comments. We have been able to work with staff, Robert Kufis, who was also here in January for our zoning lunch and learn. He has been working on it. Eric, we've been speaking to both of them, giving them our suggestions. And I gotta say, it's been a pleasure to work with them. They have been listening to us, and they have been articulating that and asking questions back sometimes for clarification. So just know that that conversation's been going on quite a while. So the current draft ordinance has incorporated several changes suggested by us as well as other stakeholders and residents. Emphasizing our concern is our members' need for adequate temporary signage, which you were just mentioning for open houses. On the commercial side, it's also for businesses to be able to direct traffic, particularly if you're a business, a small business behind a larger business. There's a driveway there, but you can't see what's back there, or if you're very deep into one of those retail centers. We are also concerned with property owners who are unable to do adequate signage for their garage sales. So that whole concept of trying to get somebody to their destination, as well as banners on residences for it's a boy, it's a girl, welcome home, blue star and gold star banners in your window, that type of thing. For businesses with the backs to the road, we're concerned that passersby will not see that. So think about as you go down Bell, some of those shopping centers, the back is to the road that you can't even see it's in there. And sometimes what you'll see is real estate, title, donuts. You don't even know what the name of that business is. So we're concerned about some of that. Can you tell us what you consider as you think about signage and surprise, and weigh the concerns of business and residents? Both parties have concerns. In January, when Robert was here, he had gone through the process of updating that you go through for updating an ordinance of any type. So just for those who were not here or they may have forgot, can you talk about the process you go through to amend that ordinance, sign ordinance or otherwise?
I'll leave that one to you.
Thank you, Mary. So one of the requirements kind of through process is that we have multiple public hearings. And being that the way the sign ordinance is constructed impacts so many individuals, we wanted to make sure that we had a robust public process that when we go through the drafting of this. So internally, we come together. We listen to the concerns. We look at the comments. We even look at some of the cases that we have on code enforcement, those kinds of things, and see what items we can kind of address. So staff kind of drafts, and then we start meeting with the different stakeholders. WEMAR is one of the stakeholders, as well as our businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, so on and so forth. once we kind of put together a draft, and we then put it out for public consumption, typically on our website or what have you. We also have our stakeholder meetings, and we also start doing public hearings, multiple public hearings. In fact, when we first released the draft sign code, we did a workshop with council where we kind of announced here what it is. We went over the 60,000 foot here. If we can't go into every single detail, but here's kind of what it is. Here are the main items we're looking at and so forth. And then we introduced the item to our Planning and Zoning Commission. Our Planning and Zoning Commission, once we introduced that item, I think we spent about 2 hours on the item the first time because it's a very robust ordinance with a lot of intricacies. And one of the things that our Planning and Zoning Commission asked, break it up for us. So we broke it up into kind of the 3 main areas that we felt, had a lot of the questions and so forth that kind of came out of the commission, and even and before that with the council, some of the things they asked. So one of them was looking at monument and wall signage. So your monument signage for a strip mall or a center, and then the wall signage that are associated with that, and that was one of our first. The second, and we had that presentation with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They provided questions and comments, and we took all those questions and comments back. The next one was specifically on electronic messaging and billboards and freeway signage, where we took not only our Planning and Zoning Commission input, but input for the public, where it was on both of those. And then we took those questions back and we started looking at the language itself. And then we moved into temporary signage, which I know affects a lot of you in this room. And we felt like that was going to be one of the ones that we're going to have the most robust conversation on. So we did our meeting. We took back questions, and one of the things that kind of came out of this was having more discussions with council and our management team and so forth on what could we do in the time frame, because this ends up being a long period of time between kind of outlaying an ordinance draft to actual formal adoption by the council. So that's one of the things that generated this possible look at this beta test. What we've done with the comments and questions that we've heard over these times, as well as the public comments and questions we've heard from our website and in phone calls and so forth, is we've started kind of re-looking at the drafts of that ordinance. So I believe within the next month or so, we'll be taking another item back to Planning and Zoning Commission, kind of recapping what we've discussed over these last 3 meetings, with a subsequent meeting to then have a recommendation by Planning and Zoning Commission to our council. After that recommendation, we'll be starting the workshop sessions with council. Many of the things that are kind of generating the long lead time of this is specifically kind of what I referenced before with the Reed versus Gilbert decision. Because this is an ever-evolving change in landscape on how sign ordinances, not only just in Arizona but nationwide, are looked at, every single case creates kind of a new little nuance, specifically when we look at drafting of this ordinance, because specifically we have this case law, Reed versus Gilbert, but we also have other case law that's been in use for sign ordinances for decades at this point. So currently we're working with our legal staff on how we kind of craft language. We'll also be working with the public over these next few months to try to start bringing these conversations to council. With originally our plan was to try to take it in front of our council in the November-December timeframe. However, because of a lot of these changing landscape, that timeframe could extend a little bit longer.
Great. And if I can, just as a follow-up on that, I'm really grateful to our staff for being very responsive to all of the stakeholders who have weighed in on this very, very sticky issue. Quite frankly, it is. It's very sticky. And so I appreciate the fact that our staff has really wanted to and done the best they can to try to reach out to the stakeholders. And also keep in mind this, that the mayor and council have a stakeholder called a constituent, that it does not come to us, that feedback does not come to us in any kind of an organized forum. It comes on the telephone at 5 at night, at 5 in the morning, emails that are sometimes less than polite. So we are trying to respond to a variety of stakeholders who have expectations. And so you know, our stakeholders, our constituents, they know what kind of city they want to live in, and we want to deliver. But we also know that in order for us to be a world-class community with a global presence, we have to make the sign ordinance stand up to legal muster. Because the reality is, some decision made in Gilbert has not just affected Surprise, Arizona, it's affected everyone across the country. I used to be in the sign business. I want to tell you, I'm glad I'm not in the sign business anymore because it's tough. And so one small decision has a ripple effect that has totally affected how we do business. You know, if I'd had to have thought about a church in Gilbert, Arizona, and their signage when I was in the sign business back in Minnesota, I don't know if I would have been able to have dealt with it. And if you think about it, because every city is a little bit different, their ordinances are a little bit different. In some respect, this particular court case has kind of shaken a lot of cobwebs out of sign ordinances around the country, some of which have been sitting on the books for far too long and not really reflecting the values that now a new community has grown up to be. So it's a good thing. It's a pain in the shorts to deal with it. It's long, it's tedious, but it's a good thing because the city of Surprise, the last time our ordinance was actually looked at and readopted by the council was long before my time. And we've been at it for as long as I've been on the council. So I hope before I'm done we get this in place. And again, I thank you for all of your diligence at working with our staff to try to help us get it right. I have a special concern, and I'm sympathetic to what the realtors in particular are going through for open houses. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the clock. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back with a couple more sign ordinance questions and then some other questions about the city of Surprise. So come back in about 5 minutes. All right, so we're going to start out with the last of my follow-up questions, which was last Friday, Robert had emailed out an update on the sign ordinance and what was going on. And one of the things that he had said in that email was that City of Surprise is going to be putting the brakes on the new proposed draft sign ordinance. So the Thursday meeting, if you were planning to go to the Thursday planning and zoning meeting and speak about the draft sign ordinance, that's not going to be on the agenda Thursday, so you don't have to go there then for that. But more importantly, you're putting the brakes on because of new court cases that have come through. So my question is, what court cases are now causing you to slow down a little bit and rethink, and what are your concerns that are coming out of those court cases?
That's really a process question that Eric actually started to address earlier in the first half, so I'm going to let you continue on that vein.
Yeah, so, you know, I think breaks is maybe not necessarily the correct term. We'll be looking at taking this through a more prolonged process. However, we'll still be taking it through the process. Again, you know, I'm not going to speak to specific cases necessarily, but you know, the environment under Reed Gilbert and the different cases that have followed afterwards have started kind of changing some of the language and some of the processes that we're looking at going through with taking the sign ordinance forward. So one of the things that we've been meeting very closely with our legal staff on is originally we had a date, you know, where we were going to look at trying to bring this to council for adoption in November, December. That's probably going to slip into the January, February range. This isn't necessarily going to impact the temporary, the beta test that we're doing at all, but it will impact the finalization of the sign code as it moves forward. And it's just the pure nature of kind of what the environment of Reed versus Gilbert and the multiple cases that have been afterwards. Just as an example, there's been Reed versus Gilbert cases that have impacted peddling. People who are out with the will work for food signs on street corners, to even specifically some of the lobbying efforts that have gone on between lobbyists and different levels of government. So it's impacted not only just kind of cities and signs, but it's impacted a little bit of everything, because what came out of Reed versus Gilbert is that signage is a freedom of speech. That signage is freedom of speech, and therefore now it's becoming, you know, what speech is specifically can governments actually regulate. The original narrow version of it was that, okay, we can regulate speech within specific right-of-ways, within city right-of-ways, within streets and those kinds of things. And now it's starting to transition into commercial speech. So Home Depot or Walmart or those kinds of things. And does that impact? So those are the large dives that staff and the legal department, not only of the city of Surprise, but all cities are going to have to look into when they're revising their codes.
Can you suspend giving out violations and taking open house signs until the new sign ordinance is put in place?
So that's a good question. Tonight we have on to do this possible temporary beta test policy. If that goes into effect, it would go into effect 30 days. Technically, within those 30 days, we'd have to enforce the code as is. With the way the code's written, we have to enforce the code as is. It's not to say that if, depending on what goes on this evening, what's going to happen, that there wouldn't be necessarily a notice or a knock at the door. However, if depending on how it goes, you know, it just kind of depends. But our staff has to enforce the codes that are enforced at this time.
Okay. We are going to change to another subject now. So while driving Surprise, there are several fast food establishments coming into Surprise. Is there any way to cap the fast food?
The cap fast food. You struck a nerve with me on this question. So, look, I have nothing against fast food restaurants, In-N-Out Burger or anything else. I have nothing against fast food restaurants. Here's the deal. I had the very first Barbie and I had the very first McDonald's hamburger. Okay, I'm that old. So I have an understanding of how America moves and America drives and America needs a quick fix and a hamburger joint. I understand that, I get that. So the city of Surprise is dotted with fast food restaurants all over the city. And what did I say in the first half of this program? 91% of the workforce is on their way to someplace else. So they're going to have, they need that coffee in the morning or a breakfast, you know, sandwich or whatever on their way to something else. And they come home in their evening and they've been on an hour-and-a-half drive back and they need to pick up McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken for the family because there's no time to cook, double income family, you know the drill. So that is, fast food has a place in American society today that we are not going to change. So, but the reality is, and this has been well known, that I have felt that fast food restaurants are a quick fix on your way to someplace else, and it's not a destination. And so that is why I have resisted putting fast food restaurants in what will be our downtown, because it does not create a destination. It just gives you that opportunity to go get a quick fix and then go someplace else. I want people to see our downtown as something truly unique and sustainable, and fast food is the antithesis, in my view, of sustainability for a variety of environmental reasons as well. So can we cap them? I can't cap nail salons. I can't cap pizza salons. I can't cap Walgreens and CVS. I can't cap. It's a private property right, to be honest. It's a private property right. And I think our planning department has done a great job of respecting private property ownership. And it's a balancing act, frankly, when we as policymakers are trying to get the policy right so that we can implement a vision for a community as big as the city of Surprise. So for us, I think we've been pretty much on track throughout the entire city. We've really worked hard at trying to provide opportunities throughout the whole city. The place that we seem to have kind of hit some challenges is getting the policy right on building a downtown and how you go about building a downtown. So no, I can't put a cap on it, but I can certainly express myself because I have the right to tell people what I think, and as do you, and so I appreciate the question.
And so it sounds like a follow-up to that is why can't we attract quality restaurants? I'm sure they will be in our dream downtown, but the amount of fast food is deterring. So following up farther into that.
Well, and whoever wrote that question, I think you agree with my strategy. There's a number of things that compete. You're competing in a very short labor market. And so you've got people who don't have a whole lot of experience, and you have restaurateurs who cannot make it. These sit-down restaurants that we all want, the white tablecloth, the classic ma and pa restaurant, the concept restaurant. These folks are taking a big risk. They're a one-off most of the time. They're not a corporate store. And so they are having to compete with the guy who's paying minimum wage down the street at the McDonald's. And they have a lot of competitive edges at the corporate store that the independent does not have. They also have that backing of the corporation, so they can even do take some losses in some cases. They can be a loss leader in a particular shopping area, whatever. We can attract concept restaurants, and I want to continue to see more. There are a number in Surprise already, many of whom would have enjoyed so much success because of scarcity that they are expanding. And you don't want to grow so fast that you lose what attracted you there in the first place. But we're working, trying to keep those restaurateurs in a healthy environment, and I would agree that we need to do more to try to find those types of restaurants that will be a destination. We look forward to one day driving into downtown, whether it's on Civic Center Drive or Statler Boulevard, coming in, finding a place to park, dump the car, and spend the whole day. Going to restaurants, being entertained, going to a ball game, going to a tennis tournament, whatever your heart desires, that would be the dream vision.
And another one along the same lines, regarding multiple locations of the same business, how do we change the current laws or guidelines regarding the restrictions of one company building in multiple locations? An example is Burger King.
This crowd has an issue with burger joints. Just saying. Again, we cannot limit the Burger Kings, the pizza joints, the nail shops, the Walgreens and CVS stores. We can't put a moratorium on that. It's kind of like the sign issue. We have to treat everybody fairly, and we have to obey the law. And if someone owns a piece of land, as long as it fits within the overlay, whatever our zoning ordinance is, it's legal. And oftentimes people will come in and say, oh, I want a variance or whatever. I hate having to do variances. Let's get it right in the first place. That's why I want our sign ordinance to be right in the first place, because the last thing I want to do is to have to sit through a variance hearing every meeting. I want a variance, I want a variance. Planning Commission would like not to have to sit through variance requests. It's mind-numbing. Let's get the policy right so you don't need a variance. And so again, we have to respect the rights of the property owner, and at the end of the day, those corporate stores are going to come in when they see a good thing going, they go, surprise. Surprise is going to be something. Well, I say it already is. They want to get in on the ground floor. They can buy a piece of dirt cheap. They can throw up a store quickly, and they're going to replicate that multiple times. Why? Because they believe in the city of Surprise. So instead of seeing it as a bad thing, let's take a look at it as a good thing, a sign of a community that's really on the come. And we are making a big impact, I think, in the Northwest Valley. And Someday, we're going to have a heck of a lot more than just a lot of Burger Kings and nail shops and Walgreens. I think we already do. We're well on our way.
Who handles road planning and lighting? What guidelines are there to minimize lighting as we encroach on the white tanks?
Well, landowners obviously have an impact on how we encroach on the white tanks. There is a significant parcel of state lands, north, south, right up against the white tanks. And so it is owned by the state, and you've probably heard a lot about state lands. They are our most important partners as a growing city. We need to have a powerful working relationship with the state land department because that's the land of opportunity. So we want to try to find a way to create kind of a buffer zone between sprawl and contain that growth into our city proper, and then also find that buffer zone. What's the appropriate height where we're not building above a certain elevation because we want to protect the view shed, we want to protect the mountain range. So this all becomes part of Eric's department's challenge to work with the state land department on making certain that that we find an appropriate way to protect it, but develop it responsibly. Because at the end of the day, you know there's going to be someone who's going to want to develop at least some portion of that state land, and that's the way the state is going to actually generate more revenue for our schools, is by making certain that it's the highest best use. So it's a balancing act. The other part of the question was,
Find that for you.
I have to,
Let's see.
lighting.
Road
Road
lighting,
planning
yeah.
and lighting. So in Maricopa County, we have a planning agency called the Maricopa Association of Governments. And so big picture in terms of municipal governments that are all agencies of the Maricopa Association of Governments, we all kind of throw our dreams in the kitty and say, here's what we want. And we kind of wait for that next ballot when we will go out to the voters and say, here's the big picture vision for the entire Maricopa County road system, municipal road system. And these are the things that we want the voters to vote on and to approve. And the last time that happened was in 2004. And so everybody that had a vision and a dream on things to put in that plan, they put it in 2004. Well, we also know what happened in 2007 and 8, because that plan was funded by the sales tax. And in 2007 and 8, when the wheels came off of our economy and that plan became underfunded, the MAG Regional Council about every 6 months was in the position of having to take certain projects off of the plan and throw them in the waste can. And for example, certainly, last one in, first one out, sort of the concept that you look at a city like Surprise, which is at the end of the cul-de-sac, some of the things that we had most wanted were not necessarily roads, although we would certainly like east-west roadways, but we'll never get the kind of east-west roadways that punch through Sun City and Sun City West, because that's just not going to happen. Sun City and Sun City West don't want us punching through. We're not going to. So we have to go around. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. Got to go around it. So we're going around it. And so we look at other roads as a city that we would like to put into the next Proposition 500. We're doing a transit study right now, just really a need study for this growing community. And obviously when you put 434 students on a campus in the center of Surprise, it's going to change the needs. So, and that's just one element. So we're preparing all of those things, and then the city of Surprise itself, we don't have a transportation fund. We have a tiny little transportation fund, but we don't have like a big picture transportation fund. like other cities that have, let's say, a quarter of a penny sales tax that they go into a transportation fund that can then pay for the local match for some of the state and federal programs. So again, it's big picture, the region plans together, but right now, the uncomfortable situation I'm in is looking at how every time my constituents buy a cup of coffee, they're paying for somebody else's project, which frustrates me. So I want to make certain that when we get in the Prop 500, we would get every dream that we want, and we've got all the data to prove that it's not going to fall off of the plan, and that we could sustain that project through the next vote of the people. So it's a regional thing. One more complication, and Eric will appreciate this. He used to be in the East Valley. He actually used to work in a city that wasn't in Maricopa, called Maricopa. Recently, the complexities of planning for roads and transit in the valley, in Maricopa County, became complicated because planning agencies and local MPOs, they wanted in the game, the Maricopa County game, and they're not in Maricopa County. Well, those of us who see the West Valley as the next big thing, and in fact, we've been waiting our turn very patiently, were very, very frustrated a couple years back when the MAG Regional Council came to the council and said, well, they want in Maricopa and Casa Grande and Florence, and they want in. And I said, whoa, time out. We've been waiting our turn for a long time. We need to make certain that we are the Maricopa Association of Governments. I was the only person that voted no. I can't believe it, but I was the only person that voted no. And so that initiative was signed by Governor Brewer, and now we are the Maricopa Association of Governments, plus Maricopa, the city of Florence, and I think Casa Grande, who are now in our MPO. Last week, I was taken aside by the new chair of the Maricopa Association of Governments, which is the mayor of Buckeye, and he said, Mayor Wolcott, you were right, because they just gave me a call and they want to start talking about how to put the mayors of these outside of Maricopa County cities on the executive committee. And I went, well, there you go. So this is going to be a challenge, and we're going to enter that discussion here, and I think in another couple of weeks. But I mean, it's a legitimate thing to be working in collaboration with your neighboring counties and neighboring planning organizations, because there is a commute shed that goes outside the artificial barrier called the county line. But when we're starting to look at resources and where they're going, and we're already starting to see a lot of the resources and matching pots of money kind of drift in an easterly direction, it concerns me. And so I would urge you to talk to your mayor, wherever you live, and encourage them to fight for the West Valley and to make certain that they understand we have no grudge against the East Valley, but it's our turn and we're ready.
So just so you know, if you are not familiar with MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments, we have several of their maps. They are a great information source on the Weimar GAD website. I just got an email last Thursday. They're changing their websites over. So we will spend the next month reassessing those links. So if you go there like today and a link is broken, let us know. We'll make that a priority, but we're going to go through it and have to find. We have a boatload of their information on that website. So just know over the course of the next month, we'll be reassessing and making sure we have links and the links go someplace now that they've changed their website. But it is an amazing organization with lots of good information that you and your clients can use. Before we go on to the next question, Eric, the mayor had mentioned you working with the state and that area out near White Tanks, did you want to illuminate anything on that in your process or how you go about that?
So as the mayor said, one of the items that when I first came to the city, that one of the main points was to start working with the state land department and planning in and around the White Tanks. Council and the mayor and so forth have done some things in the past, specifically in 2009, setting up the wildlife corridors and so forth, specifically kind of the northern edge of the White Tanks in and out into the Bradshaws. So one of the things that we've approached the state on specifically is if you remember got a lot of publicity about 1 to 2 years ago with the city of Scottsdale setting aside a bunch of state land for developable land. And one of the things that you have to look at when you're looking at development of state land is what's the highest, and, as the mayor said, highest and best use for that property, because ultimately the 15 beneficiaries that the state has, their ultimate mandate is to make them as much money as possible. That's what it is. So one of the things that when you look at wildlife corridors and protecting those, and then looking at development of the state land parcels is how do you balance the protection with the benefit to the state? So if you look at what the city of Scottsdale did with their process in the Sonoran, I think it was the Sonoran Desert Preserve, is that they were able to set aside a lot of land that the city purchased. However, they were able to trade densities into areas that were developable for the state. However, they're still kind of keeping to concert kind of where they're located adjacent to the foothills up there. But it allows them to kind of trade the benefits for the burdens, necessarily, if you want to call them burdens, of preserving land to making sure that they are still providing that value to their beneficiaries. So that's one of the items that we've been in discussions for the last 2 or 3 years with the state. The one thing about it is the state land department, they're staffed extremely lean. If you want to call it lean, I would say skeleton, maybe minus a few bones of that skeleton, to kind of to try to operate that department. So I know that's one of the things that the mayor has spoken with the governor specifically about, on making sure that they have the robust staff levels to be able to start processing these wants, needs, and expectations of the communities that have state lands in and around them. So that would be what I would kind of add to that.
And if you're not familiar with the state land, May of 2016, Eric was one of our panelists at our Economic Development Forum. And at that, we also had one of our panelists was Lisa Atkins, who is the director of the State Land Department. And one of the things that was discussed was her vision of preserving, not just selling off the land, but preserving the land and having multiple streams of income on each parcel of land, and working with the cities, particularly out here in the West Valley, as they develop, so that both parties get needs and the beneficiaries get the most that they can out of that land asset. So that is on the video section of the Weimar GAD website. You can go there and see those comments if you're unfamiliar with that as well. We have time for one last short question, and I want to thank you both for being here so nicely. How can realtors help promote the City of Surprise to their clients? Surprise has an informative website. What parts of the website do you wish realtors to point out to their clients when researching Surprise as a location to start a business or reside in?
Wow. Well, I can say that recently we completely redesigned our website, and because I was really, I didn't find it as a consumer all that friendly. It had just been one of those things where you just kept adding to it instead of kind of deleting things and kind of making certain that it's user-friendly. So our staff has done an amazing job of completely redoing our website. And so I'd say go right to it, right to the first page and dive in, because you're going to find a lot of really neat things about our city. I think it really tells a great story about what a great city the City of Surprise is and what a promising future we have. We have, I think, some of the most engaged people in the West Valley are in the City of Surprise, and I'm really proud of that. And we want to continue to promote that, because an engaged city is a healthy city, and we can't grow a community without input. So that website is one that is really important to all of us. There's opportunities to give feedback. There's a notify me button where you can go in and say, I want to notify the mayor. This is what I think, and so I'll get these pieces of feedback, and we can make certain that our staff get that feedback as well. Each council member has that notify me button on their webpage as well. I invite you to come to my webpage. And it is, we really value everyone's feedback. We value the feedback of each and every one of you. And as I was talking to one of you earlier during the break, you're the eyes and ears of a community. You know in real time what's going on as fast as we do at the city. But you also have a unique opportunity to help give us feedback of what you're hearing. And you know, we know that things are changing. We know the market is changing. We know the needs are changing. First thing I wanted to do when I graduated from college was buy a house. Because that was wasn't what Dad told me. That was the American dream, buy a house. And we know, I did the same thing to both my kids. I said, buy a house. First thing that you can, buy a house. Both of my kids lost their homes in the economic downturn. So, and when you think about what our kids have seen during that economic downturn and what that did to them in terms of having that, everything that they have invested in and having it gone, and thinking of how far that put them behind, and thinking about how that changes as the millennial comes on board and they're looking at, well, how do I want to invest in a rooftop? Do I want to invest in a condo? Do I want to invest in a single-family detached home? Do I want to rent? Am I really sure where I'm going to be in the next 5 years? You know, these are all questions that come into play. And so that's why that website, I think, is so important, so you can see that we're not just a place to sleep. We have a place that's working on bringing jobs. We have education opportunities. We have transportation opportunities. And so I say, go cruise to your heart's content, the city website.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, and please thank our guests.
Thank you.